In this episode, we discuss the highlights of the latest Quad summit, including the moment US President Joe Biden was caught on a hot mic. We also talk about the alleged sexual assault case that took place inside a police station in Odisha. But first, we talk about how, despite a warning from the Supreme Court last year, the authorities in Maharashtra have still not taken action in a number of hate speech cases. Hi, I'm Shashank Bhargava, and you're listening to Three Things, the Indian Express news show. Now, before we begin talking about this story, we first need to know about the Sakal Hindu Samaj, which had started taking out rallies across Maharashtra back in 2022.
So basically, Sakal Hindu Samaj is this umbrella organization, in fact an umbrella term for several right-wing Hindu organizations.
That's Indian Express's Mohamed Thaver.
So, that is the common point, and they come together to protest against issues that they feel plague the community.
This includes conspiracy theories about religious conversions and love jihad.
And so since November 2022 is when the Sakal Hindu Samaj kind of started taking rallies in various parts of the state. And by the first half of the 2023, there were a lot more rallies. Like they started out in November 2022, and by 2023, by the first 6 months especially, there were rallies in various parts of the state.
While the exact reason for the formation of the group remains unclear, sources have previously told the Indian Express that the killing of Shraddha Walkar, allegedly murdered by her partner Aftab Poonawala, may have prompted it. But what we do know is that the outfit began by claiming that there are rising cases of love jihad in the state.
So they said that, we need to come together to protect our girls because, Muslim men are converting them and things like that. A few of these cases were also registered by the police, but although later on these cases did not come to much and the police realized that there was no communal angle per se, but initially it is these FIRs and these incidents that kind of propelled these organizations to come together and, saying that, we need to come together to protect these cases. So, for example, if there was a case in Latur, where if a boy is from one community and the girl is from the other community, and if there were allegations, so a lot of these people would end up going there. So it was a pattern. There would be political leaders who would go there, who would call it a love jihad case or things like that. And then the next SHS rally, the Sakal Hindu Samaj rally, would kind of happen there, where they would go and they would say that, we need to be careful. So it started out like that. But as the number of rallies started increasing, one thing that kind of came to the fore is that these rallies were soon kind of getting converted into events that were used by some people to kind of give out hate speeches against communities.
For example, these rallies, which were carried out across 20 districts, called for the economic boycott of the Muslim community.
They would say that we need to ensure that these people are no longer living here. And the first step to do that would be to not purchase things from them. And this is the stage. And what also happened is that these were not very covert rallies. These were rallies happening publicly, and they encouraged videos being shot of these rallies so that they could then be circulated on WhatsApp groups. So because of that, a lot of this content started coming out and people started realizing that what is happening here is kind of it was going into the hate speech terrain.
And Mohammed, was the police taking any action against those conducting these rallies?
So initially, police was not taking a lot of action in that sense. There were complaints, there were applications being given to police stations by several organizations, but nothing much was happening till the time a Kerala-based journalist approached the Supreme Court and, pointed their attention because the Supreme Court was actually hearing another hate speech case that was filed by him, which was for cases across the country. But then in the same Supreme Court petition, he drew their attention to Maharashtra because suddenly, in 5 to 6 months, they realized that a lot of these rallies were happening, and especially a rally in Mumbai that happened. He pointed that out to the Supreme Court and said that the next rally that was slated in the next 1 or 2 weeks, this rally should not be allowed because it will lead to communal tensions.
And so after the matter was brought before the Supreme Court, was any action taken then?
So when the matter was brought out before the Supreme Court came down on the police. It told them that how is it possible that these speeches are taking place? Then it instructed them to video record these speeches and ensure that they go through them, and wherever it borders into hate speech or wherever it enters the hate speech terrain, to register FIRs in these cases. And it told the police that you do not have to wait for any complaints from anybody. If such incidents are taking place, you are supposed to record it, and wherever you feel that an offense is made out, you register an offense. So, in fact, ironically, after the Supreme Court made these pronouncements, the rally that was supposed to happen in March in Mumbai, those organizers did not actually go ahead with the rally because, they knew that the police was going to record it and all. However, after that, these rallies continued, but after that, the police were much more active. There would be a cop at these rallies who was recording these videos. So they would record this. A CD would go to the local police station. Then they would listen to that. A transcript of the entire speech would be made. Then they would take legal opinion. Because see, even when it comes to hate speech, there are certain parameters as per law. So then in some cases where they would feel that this does fall under the parameters, they would register an FIR, or else no FIRs were registered.
Right, and we understand that a number of FIRs were registered in these cases. But now your reportage and documents accessed through RTI tell us that despite these FIRs being registered and the police telling the court that they will do something about it, nothing seems to have happened beyond the registering of these FIRs.
Yeah. So you have to understand that the sections, there are two sections, 153A and 295A of the Indian Penal Code erstwhile. And now, as per the new law, there are other sections that deal with the same problem. Now, it's a double-edged sword. What also happens is, like I mentioned, hate speech in that sense, while there are guidelines given on what constitutes hate speech and what does not, but it is not a very black and white kind of a thing. It is a gray area. So there was a safeguard that was placed in these laws, that a police cannot simply register an FIR and file a charge sheet in the case. The police will need to take the opinion, like an independent opinion, it will go to the Home Department, and only after the Home Minister sanctions it can a charge sheet be filed in the case. Now the basic idea behind that was for it to act as a safeguard so that people are not just randomly booked. However, in these cases, what has started happening is that after the Supreme Court pulled them up, the police started registering FIRs in these cases. These FIRs have not been charge sheeted. And if an FIR is not charge sheeted in simple terms, the matter does not go to the court at all. It just gathers dust. Nothing happens. So there were no arrests made. And in these cases, the police sent an application to the Home Department asking for sanctions so that they can charge sheet these cases. But what we have seen is that in the 19 FIRs that the government itself submitted to the Supreme Court saying that we have registered these FIRs, not even in one case has the Home Department given approval that you can go ahead and charge sheet these cases. So in effect, what we are saying is that these cases, there is nothing happening. You have registered an FIR, which means that the person accused in this case has not been arrested. So far, he has not faced trial. So apart from just mentioning that an FIR has been registered, the legal process has come to a standstill.
And you're talking about how there are a number of FIRs that have not received the sanction from the Home Department. But are there also FIRs that have not even gone for sanctioning?
So what we have found is of the 19 FIRs in which prosecution sanction is required, in 4 cases, it is still at the level of the senior police officers. It has not even reached the Home Department. Now you have to understand that this is a bit of a tedious process. From the police station, the application goes to let's say if it's a police station, to the DCP, to the commissioner. If the commissioner finds everything is fine, then it goes to the Home Department. From there, it comes back. So in 4 of these cases, what the officers have told us who are investigating the case is that they sent the application to the senior officers who are supposed to vet it, but they did not find all the necessary paperwork, etc. was there. So it is still at their level. So it has not even reached the Home Department.
And Mohammed, we often see that right-wing outfits, they get leniency or even support from some governments. Is that what we sense might be happening here, where authorities might be reluctant to take action because of the support these outfits garner from their constituencies?
So see, you have to understand that when it comes to cases of hate crimes, generally too, it is not something that the police are very active, in getting prosecution sanction. And the process, honestly, is laborious, is tedious. So, a lot of times, even generally, hate speech cases may take, like I found one case, that FIR which was registered in 2014, it got approval from the Home Department this year. So, while generally there is lethargy when it comes to getting such cases prosecuted, but there are also cases which get approval very soon. There was an FIR registered in 2024 which got approval in the same year. The problem in this case is that these are sensitive cases, because here is a case where the Supreme Court is directly telling the government to ensure that justice is done. So for the delay to happen in these cases is a sore point for many, because while generally the process is laborious, what we have seen in the past in other cases is that in any case where the judiciary is overlooking it, where the judiciary is asking the state government to ensure that justice is also seen to be done, generally the state government acts much more swiftly. So in this case, however, we have not seen that happen as yet.
And since the matter was first brought before the Supreme Court, have we seen more of these rallies by the Sakal Hindu Samaj?
So after these matters started coming to the Supreme Court and the police started taking suo motu action, slowly, like for example, take the case of one Kajal Shringala, also known as Kajal Hindustani, who used to give a lot of speeches in Gujarat. There have been FIRs registered against her. She came to Navi Mumbai. She gave a speech which was qualified as a hate speech, and the police registered an FIR against her. And the police also issued a notice to her, after which she has not come back to Maharashtra. So after action started being taken, although charge sheets have not yet been filed, we did see that the number of rallies and the number of these people who do enjoy a certain popularity were not as forthcoming as they were earlier. There was a lull, but now in July this year, MLA Nitesh Rane said that they are going to start these rallies again, and the issue, he said, was the treatment of Hindus in Bangladesh. So he said we are going to start the Sakal Hindu rallies again. In August, they started again, and there was violence in 3 districts in Maharashtra, and there were 6 FIRs registered. So while there was a lull in between after the Supreme Court and the police action, the rallies did have started since the past month. With Maharashtra going to elections, I think in November, one does get a feeling that these rallies, may continue.
And next we talk about the highlights of the latest Quad summit, which took place in the United States. The Quad is a strategic grouping between the US, UK, Australia and India, which was formed back in 2007. When we spoke to Indian Express's diplomatic affairs editor Shubhajit Roy, he told us about what had led to its formation.
So essentially, in December 2004, when tsunami hit the Indian coast and the region in the Indian Ocean, the American, Japanese and Australians really came forward with relief rescue at that point of time. So there was sort of seen to be a coordination in terms of, how to respond to such a natural disaster that had struck this particular region.
Later, the Japanese government felt that it had really benefited from the partnership, coordination and exercise between these countries.
Later in 2006-07, actually, the Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, he proposed this particular format in a speech called, just after delivering a speech called the Confluence of the Two Seas. Confluence of the Two Seas, essentially referring to Indian Ocean and Pacific Ocean. And this was his speech at the Indian Parliament when he came to India for a visit. And at that point in time, the idea was born and it ran for a couple of years. But at that point of time, the Australians in government was not really very enthusiastic about it. Also under Chinese pressure, Australians walked out of it and it collapsed. Now, it was revived again in 2017 when US President Trump was in office, was in power.
He was the one who revived this grouping at the official level. And then when Joe Biden came to power in 2001, he elevated it to the leaders level.
Basically meaning the prime ministers and presidents of these 4 countries, India, US, Australia and Japan, would meet, and that's how it started. And then thereafter, they've met over the last few years. They've met 4 times in person, 6 times if you count the virtual, summit. So essentially, that's how the Quad grouping came into being.
Now, he says one of the major concerns for this grouping has been China, especially its aggression and assertiveness in the South China Sea.
So that became the strategic sort of glue for all these 4 countries, that China was really the strategic threat and rival. And, President Trump, during his 4-year term, he was the first US president to actually frame China and name China as a strategic threat and a rival to the United States in their national security strategy. So yes, South China Sea was mentioned in the past joint statements as well. But if you really talk about the leader statements, you'll see they never name China in their public remarks.
But this changed this time when President Joe Biden was caught on a hot mic.
Essentially, what he was saying, it was not meant for the microphone to catch, but there was a lag in them switching off the microphone while the press was getting out of the room to capture the opening remarks, where he named China. That was the first time that one of the leaders had named China about and framed them as a threat.
China continues to behave aggressively, testing us all across the region. And it's true in the South China Sea, the East China Sea, South Asia, and the Taiwan Straits. It's true across the scope of our relationship.
Well, if you see that China was clearly the elephant in the room. And if you really see the joint statement that, if you read it carefully, you'll see it covers almost every aspect of technological, strategic, military partnership without saying it in as many words. So from health security to cyber security to maritime security, at every single level, the Quad grouping this time came up with very concrete deliverables, concrete proposals. For example, the Coast Guards of the 4 countries are going to launch first ever Quad at Sea ship observer mission next year in 2025 to advance maritime safety. Now, this is clearly a security sort of a posturing that the 4 countries are doing without saying that they are doing a security posturing.
Similarly, he says a new regional maritime initiative was announced to monitor respective waters and deter unlawful behavior.
Again, this is seen as targeting towards China. So if you really go down the list of the joint statement, the deliverables clearly show that these 4 countries are cooperating on a host of areas where China is seen as the threat.
And Shubhajit, could you talk about what this summit meant for India specifically and how India articulated the concerns of this group?
Well, the Indian Prime Minister said that, they are meeting at a time of global tensions and conflicts, essentially hinting at the Russia-Ukraine war as well as the war in West Asia and that's going on. And the Chinese sort of assertive behavior, aggressive behavior in the Indo-Pacific, as well as in the India-China border. So he essentially said that we are not against anyone, but all of us support a rules-based international order, respect for sovereignty and territorial integrity, and peaceful resolution of all issues. So this was a very thinly veiled reference to China's behavior, in fact, China's aggressive behavior in the Indo-Pacific region.
And in that sense, do we see the Quad itself becoming stronger and more involved?
So it's much more, as they say, strategically aligned than ever. So they all understand the value of it and they identified them as like-minded maritime democracies. So essentially trying to club themselves together as democracies and looking at the other autocratic players in the region. So there are very few who are in that kind of category as non-democracies. So I think from that perspective, the Quad grouping is much more strategically aligned and they're working on deliverables across sectors to ensure their security.
And Shubhajit, along the lines of the summit, President Joe Biden and PM Modi met for an hour-long bilateral meeting. This was the 8th time that these leaders were meeting in person. Could you talk about what are the kind of things that the two countries are focusing on at the moment?
So I think US and India both realize that they need each other. So the US is sort of investing in India's rise and imparting technology, by willing to share technology. And that willingness sort of has been a work in progress over the last 20-25 years. But Biden really stepped it up. And we are seeing that manifest in sort of cooperation with semiconductors, cooperation in military technology, cooperation in artificial intelligence, cooperation in quantum computing, the sort of new cutting edge technology where India wants to be part of the supply chain, global supply chain, as China has become a disruptive geography and not a dependable geography, especially how we saw it disrupted during the COVID-19 pandemic. So I think from that perspective, it was an important meeting for the both sides where they reviewed the whole broad sweep of the relationship. They talked about the first semiconductor fabrication plant for national security purposes. They talked about a joint research by NASA and ISRO on board the International Space Station. They talked about progress in India procuring 31 remotely piloted aircrafts. They are working on a pact for a critical mineral supply chains and sharing emerging digital technologies in Asia and Africa. So we can see the broad convergences. And, mind you, the relationship has seen challenges as well in the last 4 years. For example, how the assassination plot against a pro-Khalistan figure in the US soil, how it has posed a challenge in the relationship, how the politics of the Democrats versus the BJP here in this country has posed a challenge, how the focus on human rights by the Biden administration has been, again, a challenge for the relationship. But despite these challenges, these divergences, this particular meeting showed that convergences are far higher. And despite these challenges, it will sustain and thrive. And it is now insulated or bulletproof from whoever comes to power in White House next.
And in the end, we talk about a case involving assault and sexual abuse inside a police station in Bhubaneswar, which has caused nationwide outrage. The incident dates back to the 14th of this month. Late that night, at around 1 a.m, a woman and her fiancé, an army officer, were returning home from a pub in Bhubaneswar. And on their drive back, they got into a scuffle with a group of students, which led them to approach the local police. Indian Express's Sujit Bisoyi tells us what happened next.
So, according to the allegations, when they reached the police station at around 2 a.m. in the morning, there was no police personnel were present. Only a lady police personnel in nightie was sitting on the receptions of the police station. According to the victim, fiancé of the army officer, what she said that she approached to lodge an FIR or to send a police patrol to spot these youths and to apprehend them, because apprehending that they might follow this couple. But she said immediately the lady officer fumed at her, and which led to a scuffle. And according to her allegations, from 2 a.m. in the morning till 6 a.m., the entire incident happened at the police station, in which the lady officers assaulted her and the army officer. And 6 a.m. in the morning, when the inspector in charge of the police station, he came to the police station, this lady alleged that he sexually abused the fiancé of the army officer within the police custody.
The incident later prompted the Central Command of the Indian Army to discuss the issue with the state police, urging them to take strong action in the matter.
And after the intervention of Indian Army, though the police took DGP took swift action, but the issue has blown out of its proportion, and it triggers nationwide anger actually.
Now, a day after the incident, the woman in question spoke to the media about what happened, and which is what later prompted the opposition in the state to take up the issue.
उतने में एक लेडी ऑफिसर ने मेरा गला दबाने की कोशिश की, तो मैंने उनके हाथ पे बहुत ज़ोर से बाइट किया कि मुझे छोड़िए, आप नहीं कर सकते ये सब। फिर कंटिन्यूसली 20-30 मिनट्स तक मैं स्क्रीम करती रही फॉर हेल्प। कॉरिडोर के एंड में देखा तो एक मेल ऑफिसर आर्म्स क्रॉस करके खड़े होकर बस देख रहे थे। और फिर मुझे लेके रूम में जब डाला, 2 मेल ऑफिसर मेरे हाथ पे और एक ऑफिसर मेरे पैर पे अपना वेट दे के खड़े हो गए ताकि मैं मूवमेंट ना करूं। और एक फीमेल ऑफिसर मुझे कंटिन्यूसली फेस पे किक करती रही, बॉडी पे मारती रही। और फिर वहाँ पे मुझे उन्होंने
So, day after her statement, Odisha's former Chief Minister and Naveen Patnaik, he reacted strongly and demanded a full judicial inquiry into the incident with other political leaders like Leader of Opposition in Lok Sabha and Senior Congress leader Rahul Gandhi, Congress General Secretary Priyanka Gandhi, and including leaders within the BJP who were once in BJP like former Army General and former Union Minister General V.K. Singh. Even he condemned the behavior of Odisha police. So that way, this issue bring bad light to the new BJP government in Odisha, but somehow they managed to deal with it after ordering a judicial inquiry, because the chief minister was in his constituency for 3 days. He returned on Sunday and formed a minister level committee and held meeting with the senior cabinet colleagues and senior state government officers till Sunday late night, and at around 12:30 a.m. in the morning he ordered a judicial inquiry into the matter.
He says so far 5 police personnel have been suspended, including those who are the main accused in the case.
Another development is police has also arrested 7 students who are the engineering students between the age group of 21 and 22 who had initially engaged in a scuffle with these ladies, which led them to approach the police actually. They were arrested but they were released on bail on the same day. So that is the development so far about actions, and Odisha High Court has taken strong view of the case, and they have directed police not to name victims in the case, and they have also directed the police to submit a report about installation of CCTV within the police station, because on the day of incident police said that CCTV was not there inside the Bharatpur police station. So High Court has taken a strong view of that actually and directed to install CCTV in all the police stations across state, because it's a order from the Supreme Court of India.
You were listening to 3 Things by the Indian Express. Today's show was written and produced by me, Shashank Bhargava, and was edited and mixed by Suresh Pawar. If you like the show, then do subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. You can also recommend the show to someone you think will like it, share it with a friend or someone in your family. It's the best way for people to get to know about us. You can tweet us at Express Podcasts and write to us at podcasts@indianexpress.com.